Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and it is indeed the penultimate episode of the John Carpenter series here, as we're getting into Ghost of Mars, and of course, I have Rowan, one of my most frequent collaborators and co-host of Rowan in the Wasteland. Rowan, thank you so much for joining.
Happy to be here as always.
And Rowan and I, well, Rowan's been on this show long enough that he reminded me that I had to do notes before we started actually the show, because there's actually 3 segments on this show: coming attractions, where we look at the new films coming out the weekend of this release, which will be Memorial Day, which is big because it's also my 1 year anniversary. So
Oh, very exciting.
going to be a big weekend. And then our feature, Ghosts of Mars, and then some recommendations for you. So let's get things started with our coming attractions, which we said is Memorial Day weekend. So there are actually a decent amount of movies coming out. We
Decent
have
amount, not necessarily decent movies, but a decent amount of movies.
True. Well, Little Mermaid seems to be getting some solid buzz.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll have to
wait
see.
to judge until I watch the 15-minute longer live action version of this hour and 20-minute
Yeah.
movie, animated movie. But Rome, which one is standing out most to you?
I have I had heard a while ago about a movie called The Machine, but for a while all it was to me was just like a blank poster on the coming attractions segment of my local Regal Cinemas. And I saw this and I was like, I'd never heard of this movie before. So I looked into it a little bit and it just looks so effing bonkers. I have since seen a trailer randomly. It was on TV while I was at work, so I was not expecting it. But I look up, oh, there's Mark Hamill. What is he advertising? Oh my God, this movie called The Machine. That is, it looks to be about this guy and his father who are kidnapped by some that the guy wronged about 20 years ago while drunk on a college semester abroad in Russia. I don't know why it's called The Machine, but it just looks absolutely ridiculous. The main character is this guy, the stand-up comic that I've never heard of, Bert Kreischer, who is apparently playing himself. Mark
Mhm.
Hamill is playing his father. And I don't know, like apparently it's based on his stand-up, so I don't I don't know, it's probably not based on any true life events. We know how stand-up comics love to exaggerate. But this movie, from what I've seen, which is very little, because I have adopted a relatively new creed of trying to stay. Not like I'm not going to deliberately avoid seeing trailers or footage, but like I'm not going to seek them out
Yeah.
as much as I have in the past because I like to be surprised. Um, and this movie just looks just so bonkers to the extreme that I'm very excited to see what it actually is, if it'll actually be good. Even if it's not, I think it'll at least be a little fun, or at least that's the hope.
Well, it was interesting because Rowan, Foster, Robert, and I went to go see Cocaine Bear. And the biggest reactions out of the audience there for the trailers were The Machine and Strays.
Yeah,
So we'll have to see how they turn out.
yeah.
Now, this one is extremely biased for me, and it's also based off of a stand-up comic getting his own movie too, but it's about my father. And why am I biased? Because it's about Italian people. So I get to watch Sebastian Maniscalco and Robert De Niro playing his dad go to a really uptight white, like waspy house for the 4th of July because they're going to Sebastian Maniscalco's in-laws. And, are they going to be able to handle the Italians? And that basically seems like the whole entire premise of the movie. So I'm not really a fan of his stand-up, but like at least I feel like I'll get the movie and
Yeah.
have some fun with it. Big shout out though to You Hurt My Feelings, which is the new A24 film
Mhm.
coming out with a Julia Louise Dreyfus. So that's also coming out. And also there's a big dumb Gerard Butler action thriller coming out. And if it has anything like Plane, you'll be pleasantly surprised. So it'll be an interesting weekend of movies. But
Yeah.
to jump into our feature, which is indeed John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. So to give a little bit backstory, this is considered a weird Western, space Western, which it sure is weird, and it is set up like a Western.
Yeah.
It is heavily influenced by Howard Hawks Westerns, similar to vampires. So John Carpenter was in this place wanting to make these non-traditional like horror type westerns towards the end of his career. This was a humongous box office bomb. It basically made half its budget. But it has cult classic status, which to be honest, this just has cult classic written all over it.
Right.
This was not, according to one of the producers, not supposed to be a Snake Plissken sequel, Escape from Mars. I think they're lying, to be honest. What's interesting is the lead in this film, which is not probably the two biggest names in the movie, the female lead who is this policewoman on Mars, was offered to Michelle Yeoh.
Whoa.
Franca.
Honestly, think that would have made it a lot better.
So much. When I read that, I'm just like thinking the whole entire movie. I'm like, I don't like to rag on actors too much because like they're working, they're doing their best. Like,
Right.
not the strongest actress at the center of this movie, but like Michelle Yeoh, that would have been nuts. That would have been so much cooler.
Would have kicked ass for sure.
Yeah, Franca Potent from Run Lola Run and The Bourne Identity, and Famke Janssen all declined the lead role in this movie. So Courtney Love was cast as the lead in this movie and then had to drop out last minute because of some kind of illness or injury.
Interesting.
Jason Statham was originally cast by John Carpenter to be the main prisoner character in the movie, but the studio is like, he's not a big enough name. Go get Ice Cube. Yeah. Which, honestly, Jason Statham's still in the movie, still doing his Jason Statham thing, because basically at this point he was in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. So, like, he had just done Guy Ritchie movies.
Yeah. He was establishing his thing that we have all come to associate him with.
Yes, his thing, which he's still doing into Fast 10. So, the whole entire film was shot at night, except for one shot. And like, there's literally one scene in the whole entire movie that's not shot at night. The whole film was shot in New Mexico at a gypsum mine, which is all white sand. So they literally dyed the sand red to make this look like Mars. So
that's one way to do it.
Which, that's the thing. This is a very practical set.
I do appreciate that.
And like it looks like we're here. Like it looks like a set, but it still looks real.
Right. If you like suspend your disbelief a little bit, which is kind of Carpenter's thing.
Yes. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back, because John Carpenter was just like, I'm done. And besides one film getting him pulled back in, like
just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
They Al Pacino'd him. So he did come back for one more feature, which will be my next episode that I'll be doing with my buddy Joe, starring Amber Heard. But this was like the last Carpenter film in his very consistent career, and just like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Which, having watched the movie, surprised. But, Rowan, what are your general thoughts on Ghosts of Mars?
This movie's bad. I didn't like it. I didn't hate it. I hated it on like a, on a narrative level. Like, this is such lazy storytelling. I didn't hate it entirely in the concept, because what I think late stage Carpenter is really, really good at is like coming up with pretty good ideas and concepts, but then not having the narrative muster to really sustain it or explore it in any meaningful way. And this, I haven't seen a ton of his later movies. I have heard of a lot of them, but this one, especially I think is pretty solid proof of that theory. Um, there are the John Carpenter mainstays. There's the score, which kicks the movie off, which is pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, and but generally, I just feel like it relies on the premise a little bit too much, and doesn't feel the need to really explore that, to the extent. And like also, this movie's really short, and I feel like not that I would have wanted it to be longer, but if it had
What? You
taken its
wanted like
time a
another
little bit
30
more.
minutes of this movie, Rowan?
You saw how this movie ended, Shane. It is so like the ending comes out of nowhere. It does not make sense at all. It feels like it feels like a pilot of like a bad, like, I don't know, TNT or Showtime show or
Yeah.
something like
It
that.
is probably one of the most shameless, wow, let's get us a sequel type endings
Yeah.
because there is no ending.
Right.
It just literally leads into what should have been another, and
It
not
it, sh-
even
it
like
leads into what should have been the climax, honestly. Like we don't even know what's happening. That could have brought us into what could have been
Rowan.
the
I
beginning.
know why it didn't lead into the climax because he had $24 million to make this movie and did not have the money to make what the climax of this story would have been.
That is fair. That is
And
fair.
I think so in early career Carpenter, he, for the most part, was able to take such restricted budgets and big ideas and somehow make them work.
Hmm.
Like Escape from New York has a complete narrative. They Live has a complete narrative. Could they
Yeah.
have benefited from bigger budgets to actually maximize the concept? Yes. Which, but getting that budget doesn't necessarily mean anything because you look at Escape from LA, they had a bigger budget, made it worse. Like horrible CGI. But the thing is, you could tell this film was too ambitious with its concept of like literally. So sorry to spoil this movie because this was such an amazing plot twist. Is
Exactly.
it's Mars infecting people to like get people off of the planet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like the idea of like the whole entire planet of Mars infecting everybody, turning them into like the basically the Reavers from the
Yeah.
movie Serenity, which that movie did that so much better. And there was a much more interesting reason why that happened. But like this just had Event Horizon vibes and Serenity vibes. And to be frank, both those movies did this so much better than this movie.
Right.
But it just feels like this was like half-assed of an idea. And they're just like, well, we got $24 million. Let's see how much we can film of it.
Yeah.
And then throw a movie out, which is annoying. And you mentioned the narrative. The definitely the most annoying thing about this is the narrative. And one, the framed narrative.
Yes.
So, like, here, you have Big Trouble in Little China is technically a framed narrative. They're talking to Egg Shen at the beginning, and he's about to tell us this whole story. But we
Mhm.
don't keep cutting back to Egg Shen. No, it just sets it up like, here's what happened. This movie obnoxiously is like, let's show this piece of the story because they did the cardinal sin of splitting the party, Rowan.
Yeah.
They split the party. And then we suffered because we had to listen to the main character be like, well, I heard from somebody else this happened. And then it goes to what supposedly happened, what she didn't even see.
There are a ton of like flashbacks within flashbacks too. Like characters are like, "Oh yeah, this remind like it's like a Family Guy cutaway. This reminds me of when this happened."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so frustrating. I'm just sitting here like, you could have just kept cross-cutting between these scenes as
Right.
it's happening.
They're
Like
ignoring
this,
the cardinal rule of screenwriting. They're telling much more than they're showing, which in a movie called Ghosts of Mars, you would not expect, to be sort of talked to a lot. But
well, that's
here
the
we are.
thing. So I was sitting there watching this with my wife, and I had just gotten home from like working commencement. I'd been gone all day, so she's trying to talk to me. There's like 25 minutes of exposition at the beginning of this movie. I had to say, I'm like,
Yeah.
Jess, this is nonstop talking. Like I need to actually listen to this to
Yeah.
try to figure out what the hell's going on. And that was the thing. A third of this movie, the first third of this movie, just nonstop talking, and it's just like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, drop them off and let the pew pews happen. Like, that's what this movie is.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so you mentioned the score.
Yeah.
So this was something really interesting. So I'm sitting and watching this movie and listening, obviously, and I'm big on John Carpenter scores. This felt like akin to In the Mouth of Madness. There's this like these big heavy metal riffs and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I know this guitarist. And I looked it up. He had five famous guitarists work on this movie, lending their
Really.
skill. So, like, one had Buckethead, which was the most random 2001
Uh-huh.
type in Scott Ian from Anthrax. And I'm like, because there's definitely some thrash metal going on here. And
Right.
this is the point where I'm like, there's this really cool sequence with like this really awesome guitar riff. And I'm like, this sounds like Steve Vai. And it was. And I'm like, wait a minute. So John Carpenter probably put more effort into the guitarists to make
Right.
this score than the narrative in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm just like, and you know what? This is probably the reason why he just does scores now.
Yeah.
Because
It's
he
he's
went,
good at
yeah,
it.
he went to school for music. So
Yeah.
like that was his first passion. And just like it showed here because
Yeah.
everything else, like, there's elements of this film that you could feel Carpenter there. You can feel the tension building, and like he knows how to direct. But
Hmm.
when you're directing crap, you only do so much because like the characters are awful.
Yeah.
Like there's like no depth to any of these characters and no effort. And like, did you also get like really weirded out by like the hanging thread of like, are they trying to make a romance happen between Jason Statham and the main character in this movie, and then all of a sudden not acknowledge it ever again?
I figured as an early 2000s movie, they were probably heading towards that anyway. And then there was one scene where he was like, "Well, we're gonna die anyway, might as well, I don't know, get together or something." And then they like make out for a minute, and then that's it.
And then he brutally dies and she
Yeah.
acknowledges it in no way, shape, or form. Just like you just kissed this guy, and then just like, because that's the other thing too. There is some gruesome, grotesque things that happen in this movie. I
Mhm.
didn't think I was gonna see people sling blading rotary saws
Yeah.
at people in the street chopping limbs off, but I'm like, that's what you get in this movie.
It's those like little ideas that remind me that, oh yeah, there is some talent behind the camera somewhere. But
Yes.
everything was sort of half-assed to make this movie. But there's like the occasional glimmer of, hey, there's some creativity here.
I feel like the only effort got put into this was the action sequences.
Yeah.
And then just the score goes insane. And people are like getting heads chopped off, limbs chopped off.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, there's those elements here. I'm like, I feel like this whole movie was based around coming up with action sequences and music. And it's like, oh crap, we gotta come up with some kind of story. I
Right.
did think it was interesting, like because Carpenter's thing is POV shots, and the POV shot of like the infection flying around
Hmm.
was like creepy and weird,
Right.
and but then there's no rhyme or reason to who got infected or what,
Exactly.
and then all of a sudden they found a magical way to stop the infection one time
Hmm.
and then didn't use it again.
Yeah. It feels like they were trying to do Evil Dead, and that didn't really pan out super well.
Yeah, it did feel kind of like they're just ripping that off, but like realistically, there's just bad dialogue, bad characters, and there's definitely like moments where I'm just like, did they forget about this character, or did I miss something, or
Right.
something going on? I'm like, where'd the train go? And then the train guy's like, where did you go? I'm like, they've been in the same town. They've been in this whole entire thing. You're the
Right.
one who left.
Yeah.
Uh,
Why are we wasting precious time on this conversation?
so, yeah.
Yeah.
But you want to hear an interesting thought that popped in my head, though, Rowan?
Yeah.
Which is now going to spark a new idea that I have for Wasteland talks,
Yeah.
is what if? And I'm sitting there watching this movie, and I took my phone out and texted my brother, "What if dot 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 John Carpenter directed Resident Evil?" Because like there's these corridor that like that one corridor shot I thought was pretty cool, built some tension thing. Like I want to see like prime heyday John Carpenter directed Resident Evil movie
Yeah.
because I think it would be legit.
Hmm.
Because like just take The Thing and make it Resident Evil, and
Right.
you would have a masterpiece.
Yeah.
So
Because
my brother,
like you could tell that he has sort of like the passion for telling this type of story. He wouldn't make the movie otherwise. Like he wasn't at, sort of the cash grabby John Carpenter yet. And so I feel like now he like this is a story he does want to tell. Um it just didn't turn out the way I'm sure he envisioned it.
I just feel like at this point, like in his career, his directing is still there. He could still
Mhm.
competently and actually masterfully direct a movie, and
Yeah.
he could still kill it with the score. I just feel like he lost something on the writing end
Yeah.
of things. And like he didn't write all of his movies from the 90s into the 2000s, but like he was a co-writer on this. Like you should have done better. And here's the thing, I don't know the details of like, did he come on later or did somebody else write this first or something like that? But like, it just, you could tell that he was losing something. And I think he knew it too, which is
Yeah.
why he took a step back. I'm really interested to watch The Ward. But you know what, Rowan?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Morbidly, I want to buy this and
Yeah.
watch this and just like, because I feel like I would have a lot of fun watching these action sequences again and then just
Mhm.
completely ignoring all the BS that happens
Right.
in between
Right.
them. Which also, random decapitated headshot of Pam Grier. Just
Yeah.
throw that out there. The biggest name person you could get in this movie. Well,
Aside from Ice Cube
I
and
guess
yeah.
technically Ice Cube was the
Yeah.
biggest one, which there was a lot less Ice Cube in this movie.
Yeah, he showed up what, like 40 minutes in, half an hour in?
I feel like it wasn't until the last 20 minutes where like he heavily got like
Right.
put into the movie because through this whole movie I'm like, so why was the Ice Cube character bigger role than Jason Statham's character? Because Jason Statham's in this movie like the whole movie.
Right.
But anyway, but Rowan, this should be a double feature with one of our Rowan Wasteland films. One,
Yeah.
doesn't this have that vibe?
Yeah.
And weren't they both
Yeah.
from 2001?
Yes, indeed.
Something was in the water then, Rowan.
I think when I was making my 2001, when I was adding this to my ranked list, I think I put this right above the one.
I agree.
So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Rowan, what would you like to recommend to people? I'm sure it's not Ghosts of Mars.
It is unfortunately not Ghosts of Mars. Um, this is I'm gonna recommend this movie that I watched pretty recently that's free like everywhere. YouTube, Peacock, Pluto, Tubi, Vudu, like it's free everywhere. It is a French film in the English language called Jack and the Cuckoo-Clock Heart. It is this weirdly animated musical that and it, like it's also very short, it's like 90 minutes. It is about this guy Jack who was born in Scotland in the 1870s on the coldest day ever, and because of the extreme cold, his heart stops beating. So this witch lady replaces it with a cuckoo clock where his heart should be. And so he has to follow three rules. I believe one of them is like he can't get too excited. And I think I think he can't get too excited, he can't get angry, and he can't fall in love because his heart might not be able to handle it.
Hulk
And huh?
sounds like the Hulk.
Oh yeah. You wouldn't like him when a cuckoo clock gets angry. But when he grows up, he does meet someone, and he has to reckon with the fact that what if his heart stops, but he's in love with this person, and there Georges Méliès is in it too, and there's a Jack the Ripper dream musical sequence. This movie's insane. But at the end, it's actually really, really sweet and sad. Like with some really, really poignant themes as well. And I like this movie a lot more when I realized that like this is an experimental animated movie. It's not trying to be conventional, and it's not trying to, it's not trying to check any boxes. It is doing its own thing. So this is a strong, strong recommend from me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to be everywhere and it seems weird. And I just looked up it on IMDb. The animation looks a little scary,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
but it's on Peacock, so I added it
Yeah.
to my watch list.
Hell yeah.
Now, I have a few recommendations, and some of these are not the strongest of recommendations, and some of them are very much like for a very specific group of people.
Yeah.
But my first one is I feel like a lot of people are being really harsh on Charlie Day and Fool's
Yeah.
Paradise.
Mhm.
It's a silly, stupid movie, but like I had fun with it.
Yeah.
And like I feel like it's trying to be being there, the
Mm.
Peter Sellers movie on some
Mhm.
level, but like it's not as clever or smart, but like just the cast and the crazy goofiness, I had fun with it. So
Yeah.
soft recommend to all of you. Now this is only for the morbidly curious and cinephiles out there, and it's The Devils. And this is a horror movie about a priest who was believed to be doing witchcraft. And this movie stars Oliver Reed. Like this is from like the 60s.
Mhm.
And this is one of the most insane movies I think I've ever watched in my whole entire life.
Really?
There is just straight up insane, like there's so much sex and nudity in this movie. And there's this whole entire crazed orgy of nuns.
Oh my
At one
Lord.
point, I'm just like, this apparently is one of the most banned movies out
Whoa.
there. And this was insane. So if you're morbidly curious, you can find it somewhere on the internet. Uh, because I was hard pressed to find it on any streaming services. I wonder
Right.
why. Uh, this was insane. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm glad I watched from like a cinematic standpoint because there's a lot of interesting things from a filmmaking standpoint. Don't know how to feel about it, though.
Right.
It's crazy. And also it's definitely going to upset you if you're very religious, so probably don't
Yeah.
watch it if you are. This one is the easiest recommend that I have, and I'm doing this for a very specific reason. I rewatched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly yesterday, one of my favorite films, which has my favorite score and my favorite scene in the history of cinema, which is the standoff at the end, which is like peak from like the second that Blondie shoots a cannon at Tuco and Tuco winds up at the cemetery. That until the end of the movie is some of the most epic filmmaking in the history of film.
Yeah.
But I love this film so much, and it I'm trying something else out, which I'm going to attempt to do another podcast because why not?
Why
And
not?
it's going to be a once a month thing where I'm taking one of the articles that I had been writing and turning it into an audio podcast. And that's
Nice.
the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow, which isn't quite like a review of the film. It's more of like a love letter to the film. So basically, it's going to go in order from now on, but I am starting with Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm going to go down all of my favorite films. from the top.
Very nice.
So the next ones will be like the Lord of the Rings films. But like I talk about like my relationship with westerns. How did I become a fan of westerns? How did I see this film for the first time? And then talking about all the things that I love so much about the film. So it's
Mhm.
more of like that kind of approach than just like your standard kind of review for a film. And watching this for 3 hours yesterday, just love it every time.
Nice.
And that's a wrap here on
Amazing.
Welcome to the Wasteland. Rowan, would you like to shamelessly plug anything for all of our viewers to check out your stuff?
Yeah, I have a website where I write about movies. That's thelenientcritic.com. I have two other podcasts I would like to plug on here. There's Rowan in the Wasteland that I do with Shane, and Runtime Babe that I do with my partner Davis. That's also we have a lot of great stuff coming, and that we're very excited about. So definitely check that out wherever you can find your podcasts. And I'm on Twitter at Bits of Joel and Letterboxd at The Screen Avenger if you would like to find me there.
And thank you, Rowan, for coming back on. As always, one of my most frequent collaborators and good friends.
Of course.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.